It had been raining since morning. The sky looked heavy and dull as if it was morning too. The wind carried the smell of wet soil and flowers that people had brought for the funeral. Everyone stood quietly around the freshly dug grave, holding umbrellas, whispering prayers, and trying not to cry too loudly. Among them was a boy, no older than 15, standing still with his hands shaking. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying for days. That boy was Noah. He had barely slept for 3 nights. Everything felt like a bad dream that refused to end. He kept waiting for someone to tell him this wasn't real, that his mother was just in the hospital and she would come home soon. But deep down he knew that wasn't true. She was gone. His mother had always been his whole world. After his father passed away years ago, it was just the two of them in a small house at the edge of town. She worked long hours at a nearby store, and yet she always found time to cook for him, laugh with him, and remind him that no matter how tough life got, they would make it through together. And now, she was the one lying quietly inside that wooden box. Noah stood close to the coffin before it was lowered into the ground. His relatives were there, his mother's sister, some neighbors, and a few of her co-workers. They all tried to comfort him, but nothing could fill the emptiness in his heart. His aunt placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Say your goodbye, sweetheart." He nodded slowly. He didn't know what to say. How do you say goodbye to the only person who ever made you feel safe? He took a small step forward. The coffin was surrounded by flowers and a soft white blanket his mother loved. Noah had brought a few things with him. A framed photo of the two of them smiling at the beach, her favorite ring, and her old phone. The phone looked worn out from years of use. The back cover was scratched, but it still worked. It was the same phone she used to call him every evening, even if they had just seen each other a few hours before. "Just to check if you're okay," she would say in her gentle voice. That phone had been part of their daily life. When she was at work, she'd text him reminders like, "Don't forget your lunch," or "Lock the door, love." Sometimes, she'd send a photo of a sunset or a funny sticker just to make him smile. Noah had been holding that phone all morning. He didn't plan to bury it with her. He just wanted to keep it close. It felt like a piece of her. When it was time to close the coffin, Noah leaned over and placed the photo and the ring inside. He whispered, "I'll miss you, Mom," his voice breaking. He reached out to touch her blanket one last time, unaware that the phone slipped from his hand and fell between the folds of the fabric. He didn't notice it at all. The coffin was sealed soon after. The sound of nails being hammered into the wood echoed in his chest like thunder. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The priest said the final words, and then the coffin was lowered. Noah stood there watching it disappear into the ground. Raindrops mixed with his tears as he whispered, "Goodbye." After the burial, people slowly started leaving. Some hugged him, others just patted his back and walked away quietly. His aunt stayed by his side, holding an umbrella over both of them. "You should come home," she said softly. "It's getting cold." Noah nodded. But before leaving, he glanced one last time at the grave. He wanted to say something more, but his lips couldn't move. That night, the house felt painfully silent. The walls that once echoed with his mother's laughter now felt empty. Her slippers were still by the door. Her favorite mug sat on the table. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly in the air. Noah sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands. His mind kept replaying the moment she used to call him, that small ringtone that always made him smile. Out of habit, he reached for his phone and scrolled through old messages. There they were, hundreds of little notes from her. "Eat something before studying." "Good night, love you." "Don't forget to wear your jacket." Each message felt like a voice from the past. He couldn't stop reading them. And then he did something strange, and he dialed her number. He knew it wouldn't go through. He knew she was gone. But he wanted to hear her voice again, even if it was just the voicemail. The phone rang once, then twice, and finally her recorded voice played. "Hi, love. It's Mom, leave me a message." Noah closed his eyes. His throat tightened. "Hi, Mom," he whispered softly. I miss you so much. I don't know how to do this without you. The house is so quiet. I keep waiting for you to call me. I just wish you were here." He stayed quiet for a few seconds, listening to the emptiness, and then ended the call. From that day, it became a routine. Every night before sleeping, he would call her number, listen to her voice, and leave a short message. Sometimes he'd just say, "Good night," Other times, "I got through the day, Mom." It became his way of coping. One evening, about a week later, he was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the rain outside. His aunt was in the other room talking to a neighbor. The clock ticked softly on the wall. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen absent-mindedly and froze. It was a message from his mother's number. His heart stopped for a moment. He blinked, thinking maybe he was seeing things. But no, her name was right there. The same contact photo, the same number. The message said only 3 words. "Don't worry, love." The phone slipped from his hands and fell onto the table. His breath came in sharp, shaky gasps. His first thought was that someone was playing a cruel joke. But who could have the phone? No one took it from the hospital, and the number hadn't been disconnected yet because he hadn't had the strength to cancel it. He picked up the phone again, staring at the message. It looked real. The timestamp showed it had been sent just seconds ago. He tried to think logically. Maybe the phone company had mixed numbers. Maybe it was an automated message or a delayed text that somehow just arrived now. But deep inside, something told him this was different. He typed back, his fingers trembling. "Who is this?" No reply. He waited, staring at the screen, but nothing came. After half an hour, he put the phone down, trying to convince himself it was just a strange glitch. But when he tried to sleep that night, he couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard her voice saying those same words. "Don't worry, love." The next morning, he decided not to mention it to anyone. He didn't want people to think he was losing his mind. But as the day went on, the thought refused to leave his head. He went through old photos, scrolled through her texts, listened to her saved voicemails again. He kept wondering if there was any chance someone had found her phone. But that was impossible. It was buried with her. That evening, he called her number again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. "Hi, love, it's Mom. Leave me a message." He whispered into the phone. "Mom, did you really text me?" His voice cracked. "If you can hear me somehow, I just want you to know I miss you. I really do." When he hung up, he sat in silence for a long time. The room felt colder than usual. The clock ticked. The rain outside tapped against the windows, and the only light came from the dim lamp on his desk. Then his phone buzzed again. This time the message said, "Sleep early. You have school tomorrow." It was exactly what she used to tell him every night when she was alive. Noah's eyes filled with tears. He didn't know whether to be scared or comforted. All he knew was that somehow, somewhere, his mother's love hadn't gone silent yet. He sat there for a long time, staring at that glowing screen, wondering what was happening. Was it just a coincidence? Or was this something no one could ever explain? All he knew for sure was that the phone buried with her was no longer quiet. Noah didn't sleep much that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the phone resting on his chest. The soft glow from the screen kept lighting up his face each time he checked for new messages, but none came after that last one. "Sleep early. You have school tomorrow." His heart still raced whenever he thought about it. He wanted to believe there was some logical reason behind those messages, but deep down, it didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt too personal, too familiar. Only his mother had ever said those words to him that way. By morning, he looked tired with dark circles under his eyes. His aunt noticed while setting breakfast on the table. "You didn't sleep again?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not really. You've got to take care of yourself, sweetheart." "Your mom would want that," she said gently, sliding a plate of eggs toward him. He nodded silently. The smell of breakfast reminded him of the mornings his mother used to hum while cooking. She'd always wake him up saying, "Come on, sunshine, your food will get cold." Now the kitchen felt too quiet. After breakfast, he picked up his phone again. The messages were still there, no sign of them disappearing or being errors. The timestamps showed they came late at night, right around the time he used to talk to her before bed. He stared at the screen for a long time before deciding to tell his aunt. He didn't want to scare her, but he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. "Aunt, I got messages last night," he said slowly. She looked up from washing dishes. "From who?" "From Mom's number." She turned around quickly, a bit startled. "That's not funny, Noah. I'm not joking," he said. "It really happened." He unlocked his phone and showed her the messages. She wiped her hands and took the phone, reading the short texts carefully. A puzzled look crossed her face. "That's strange," she murmured. Maybe someone got her phone somehow. Maybe the number got recycled or they haven't turned off her line yet, Noah interrupted. I didn't cancel it, his aunt sighed. It could be a mistake in the system. Sometimes old messages get delayed. He wanted to believe that, but something didn't sit right. But they sound exactly like her. She used to say those things every night. His aunt looked at him for a long time, then placed the phone back in his hand. Listen, she said softly. I know this is hard for you. You're looking for signs everywhere because you miss her. It's natural. But don't let your mind play tricks on you, okay? Maybe turn off the phone for a few days. Noah nodded even though he didn't plan to. He wasn't ready to ignore those messages. If there was even a small chance that something was happening beyond explanation, he wanted to know. That evening, when his aunt went to visit a friend, Noah sat by the window, the sky turning orange outside. The wind carried the smell of rain again, just like the day of the funeral. He picked up the phone and opened the message thread. He hesitated, then typed, Mom, is that really you? He pressed send and waited. Seconds turned into minutes. Nothing came back. He sighed and locked the phone, setting it aside. Maybe his aunt was right. Maybe it was all in his head. He got up to make some tea, trying to distract himself. The kettle whistled. The house creaked softly in the evening quiet. When he turned around, his phone buzzed again. His hands trembled as he picked it up. A new message glowed on the screen. Don't be scared. Noah froze. His breath caught in his throat. The letters were simple, but they felt alive, like someone knew exactly what he was feeling at that moment. He typed back quickly. Who is this? Please tell me the truth. There was no reply. He waited and waited, but the screen stayed blank. That night, he could barely eat. His mind kept circling the same thought. How could anyone be sending these messages if the phone was buried underground with his mother? It wasn't possible, yet it was happening. When he finally tried to sleep, he left his phone beside his pillow. Every time the wind brushed against the window, he woke up thinking it was vibrating again. The next morning at school, his friends noticed how quiet he was. He didn't talk much, didn't join in any jokes. His teacher even asked if he was okay. He nodded, pretending to be fine. But inside, his thoughts were tangled in fear and confusion. At lunch, he took out his phone and stared at his mother's picture again. It was a photo of her smiling beside him at a park. She looked full of life, the way he wanted to remember her. He whispered, If you're trying to tell me something, please, just make it clear. After school, he decided to go to the mobile company office. Maybe someone there could explain. The woman at the counter listened patiently while he told the story, trying not to sound too emotional. She typed a few things on her computer, then looked up. The number is still active, she said. We haven't received any disconnection request. Can you tell where the messages came from? He asked. She shook her head. Not exactly. It's just showing as sent from the same device. But that phone hasn't used mobile data or made calls since the day your mother passed. Noah felt dizzy. So, how are messages being sent? She gave a small, sympathetic smile. Sometimes systems glitch, especially if the SIM hasn't been used for a while. Try not to worry too much. It'll probably stop on its own. But it didn't. That evening, around the same time again, another message came. This one said, Don't forget to eat. He dropped the spoon he was holding. The sound startled his aunt, who came into the kitchen. What happened? She asked. Another message, he whispered. She frowned, walking closer. Noah, stop torturing yourself. Give me the phone. He handed it to her hesitantly. She stared at the screen, her face turning pale. This is impossible, she muttered. I told you, he said quietly. She put the phone down and rubbed her forehead. Maybe we should go to the cemetery tomorrow, she said suddenly. Why? Because if that phone is still buried there, and somehow it's on, we need to see for ourselves. The idea made Noah's stomach twist. The thought of going back to that place made his heart race, but part of him wanted answers. That night he sat awake again, thinking about his mother. He remembered the way she used to touch his hair when he was sad, the way she laughed even when she was tired, and the way she always said, love doesn't stop when life does. He never understood what she meant back then. Now it haunted him. He finally drifted off to sleep near midnight, the phone beside him like always. At exactly 2:17 a.m., it buzzed again. He woke up instantly, the room dimly lit by the moonlight. His hand shook as he unlocked it. I'm here. Those 2 words made his blood run cold. He sat up straight, heart pounding. The message didn't make sense. He typed back without thinking, "Where are you?" There was no answer, but the typing dots appeared for a few seconds, then disappeared. He didn't sleep after that. When morning came, his aunt noticed his pale face and trembling hands. "Are you sure you want to go there today?" she asked. "I have to," he said quietly. "I need to know." The sun was just rising when they arrived at the cemetery. The grass was still wet with dew. The caretaker was trimming flowers near the gate when he saw them. "Morning," he greeted kindly. "You folks visiting someone?" Noah's aunt nodded. "Yes, my sister. She was buried here last week." The caretaker pointed toward the far corner. "I remember her. Peaceful woman." "What brings you this early?" Noah hesitated, not sure how to explain. His aunt spoke for him. "We think something might have been buried with her by mistake. We just need to check." The man frowned slightly but nodded. "You'll need to speak to the office before doing anything." They walked toward the office, but Noah stopped midway. His phone buzzed in his pocket again. He froze. Slowly, he pulled it out. Another message. "Don't come here." He stared at the screen, unable to breathe for a moment. His aunt noticed his expression. "What is it now?" she asked. He turned the screen toward her. She went pale. Neither of them spoke for a while. The air felt heavy, the trees still as if the world had stopped to listen. Noah's heart beat loudly in his chest. Somewhere deep inside, he didn't know if he should be afraid or comforted, because if this was really his mother's way of reaching him, maybe she wasn't trying to scare him. Maybe she was trying to protect him from something he didn't understand yet. He looked toward her grave, standing quietly under the morning light, and whispered, "Mom, what's going on?" The morning breeze felt colder than usual. The cemetery was silent except for the faint chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves. Noah stood beside his aunt, holding his phone tightly in his hand. His heart pounded as he stared at the message glowing on the screen. "Don't come here." His aunt looked worried. "That's enough, Noah. We shouldn't stay." "But what if it's really her?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "What if she's trying to tell us something?" His aunt sighed deeply. "She's gone, sweetheart. You need to let her rest." Noah didn't answer. His mind was spinning. The messages had been strange before, but this one felt different. Almost urgent, like a warning. He didn't know whether to feel scared or protected. The caretaker came walking toward them slowly, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Everything all right here?" he asked kindly. Noah's aunt forced a small smile. "Yes, just taking a moment." The man nodded and turned away to continue his work, but Noah stayed where he was, staring at his mother's grave. The flowers they had placed a few days ago had started to fade. A small butterfly landed on one of them, and for a moment, it made him think of her again. Gentle, calm, always finding beauty in small things. He whispered softly, "Mom, if you can hear me, please just let me know you're okay." No reply came, of course. Only the quiet wind passing through the trees. On the drive home, neither of them said much. His aunt kept glancing at him, her face full of concern. "I think we should talk to someone," she said finally. "Maybe a counselor. Losing a parent is hard, and sometimes we see signs because we miss them too much." Noah looked out the window. "But what if it's not just in my head?" he asked quietly. She didn't respond. She didn't want to argue, not when she could see how much he was hurting. That night, Noah sat on his bed staring at his phone again. His fingers hovered over the screen as he scrolled through the messages. They looked so normal, like any ordinary conversation. But he couldn't stop thinking about the one that said, "Don't come here." What did it mean? Was there something he wasn't supposed to find? He turned off the lights, but sleep wouldn't come. Every sound in the room felt louder. The ticking clock, the faint hum of electricity, the soft rustling of curtains. Then, out of habit, he called his mother's number again. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. "Hi, love, it's Mom. Leave me a message." Her voice echoed through the room, calm and loving as ever. He closed his eyes, whispering, "I don't know what's happening, but I hope you're okay." He hung up and lay still for a while, staring into the dark. Just when he was about to drift off, the phone buzzed again. His eyes snapped open. Another message had arrived. "Stop calling." He sat up, heart pounding so loud it felt like it filled the whole room. He turned the phone over in his hands, unsure what to think. His breath came in short bursts. What if it wasn't her? What if someone had her phone? He got up and paced the floor. his bare feet brushing against the cold tiles. He wanted to wake his aunt, but something stopped him. A strange feeling, half fear, half curiosity, pulled him toward the window. He looked outside. The street was empty, quiet, but something in his chest told him he wasn't alone. The next morning, his aunt found him sitting on the sofa, still wearing the same clothes as the night before. "Did you sleep?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "I got another message." Her face fell. "Noah." It said, "Stop calling." She sat beside him, taking a deep breath. "Okay, then maybe you should listen. Don't call that number anymore. Just let it be." He stared at the phone again. But what if she's trying to tell me something important? His aunt rubbed his back gently. And what if holding on too tightly is what's keeping you from healing? Her words made sense, but his heart refused to let go. That evening, he tried to follow her advice. He left the phone on the table and focused on his homework. But every few minutes, his eyes drifted back toward it. The silence felt heavier than usual. He almost missed the messages. How, as strange as they were, they made him feel like his mother was still close somehow. Hours passed. He finally turned off the lights and went to bed. But around midnight, the phone buzzed again. He grabbed it quickly, not even thinking. The message said, "I'm cold." His chest tightened. He could hardly breathe. Tears filled his eyes as he stared at the words. He wanted to believe it was a mistake, maybe a random spam text. But the thought of his mother buried underground with that phone made his stomach twist. He typed back quickly, "Mom, please, I don't understand. What's happening?" No reply came. For the rest of the night, he sat awake, staring at that one message. The next day, he decided he couldn't stay quiet anymore. He told his best friend from school, a boy named Liam, who was one of the few people he trusted. At lunch, he explained everything. The funeral, the lost phone, the messages. Liam listened carefully, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "That's weird," he said finally. "But maybe someone hacked the number or something?" Noah shook his head. "How would anyone know the things she used to say to me?" Liam thought for a moment. Then maybe the phone is still working somehow. Maybe the battery didn't die. "That was over a week ago," Noah said quietly. "It should have died by now," Liam frowned. "You want me to come with you tonight?" "To the cemetery?" Noah hesitated. "You'd do that?" "Of course," he said. "You shouldn't go alone." That evening, after his aunt went to bed, Noah slipped out quietly with a flashlight in his hand. Liam was waiting at the corner of the street. Together, they walked toward the cemetery. The night air was cool and silent, the moon hidden behind clouds. When they reached the gates, Liam stopped. "You sure about this?" Noah nodded. "I just need to see." They walked through the rows of graves, their footsteps soft on the grass. The light from the flashlight moved slowly across the stones until they reached hers. The flowers from before looked darker in the moonlight. Noah's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. He sent a message. "Mom, if you're really here, please give me a sign." For a minute, nothing happened. The only sound was the wind brushing through the trees. Then suddenly his phone lit up. "I'm here." The words appeared slowly, one letter at a time. Liam gasped. "No way." Before Noah could respond, they both heard a faint sound, a muffled vibration somewhere close by. A soft, familiar ringtone echoed under their feet. Noah froze. "Did you hear that?" Liam nodded, his eyes wide. "It's coming from there." He pointed at the grave. For a moment, neither of them moved. The sound faded quickly, leaving only silence. Noah dropped to his knees beside the grave, tears welling in his eyes. "Mom?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Are you there?" The air felt still. No response came this time. Only the soft hum of the night. Liam placed a hand on his shoulder. "We should go," he said quietly. "This isn't right." Noah nodded slowly, but he couldn't look away from the grave. His heart ached with confusion and sorrow. He didn't know what to believe anymore. When they got home, it was almost dawn. His aunt was waiting at the door, worry written all over her face. "Where have you been?" She cried. Noah didn't answer. He just held up his phone. "It rang," he whispered. Her phone rang. His aunt's face went pale. She didn't scold him. She just led him inside and made him sit down. She poured him a glass of water and sat beside him quietly. After a long pause, she said, "Maybe she's trying to say goodbye. Maybe the phone, the messages, it's her way of letting you know she's watching over you." Noah looked down, his eyes full of tears. Then why does it feel like she's still here? His aunt took his hand and held it tightly. Because love doesn't go away even when people do. That night, for the first time in days, Noah didn't message back. He placed the phone on his bedside table and whispered softly, "Good night, Mom." The phone stayed silent. But somehow he could almost feel her presence there, like a quiet warmth in the room, soft and comforting, watching over him as he finally closed his eyes and drifted to sleep. When the sun came up the next morning, the sky was gray and quiet. The whole night the boy hadn't slept. His mind kept replaying the sound of that faint ringtone he had heard from underground. Every time he closed his eyes, he could almost hear it again. Soft, distant, and filled with a sadness that he couldn't describe. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. It was lying there, silent, as if nothing had happened. His aunt came in to make breakfast and saw the tired look on his face. "You didn't sleep again?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "I went to the cemetery last night," he whispered. Her eyes widened. "You went there?" "Alone?" He nodded slowly. "I heard her phone ringing. I swear I did." His aunt sighed, sat down across from him, and took his hand. "Sweetheart, grief can make you hear things. You've been through so much. Maybe your mind is playing tricks on you." "I know what I heard," he said quietly. "I even got another message. It said, 'I'm here.'" His aunt looked uneasy. She didn't want to argue, but she also didn't want to feed his fear. Maybe the phone company made a mistake. Maybe the signal is bouncing from somewhere else. "You should let me talk to them again." He nodded half-heartedly, though deep down he knew this wasn't something a company could explain. Later that day, he decided to go back to the cemetery, this time in daylight. He wanted to make sure he wasn't losing his mind. He waited until afternoon, then walked there with slow, hesitant steps. The caretaker, an older man named Mr. Hill, was sweeping fallen leaves near the gate. The boy approached him carefully and said, "Sir, I need to ask you something strange." Mr. Hill looked up. "Strange things happen here all the time, son. Go ahead." The boy explained everything. The texts, the ringtone, and how his mother's phone had been buried with her. Mr. Hill listened quietly, leaning on his broom, not interrupting once. When the boy finished, the man scratched his beard and said, "You're not the first one to tell me something like this. Sometimes phones buried underground act funny for a while. Maybe the pressure or moisture causes something in them to switch on. Sometimes signals bounce off towers nearby. I don't know the science, but I've heard stories." "But the texts," the boy said softly, "they sound like her, like the way she used to talk." The caretaker looked at him kindly. "Maybe it's not about the phone. Maybe your mom just found a way to remind you she's still watching over you." The boy looked down at the ground, unsure if he should believe that or not. Still, the words gave him a small sense of comfort. That night, as he lay in bed, he tried not to look at his phone. But curiosity kept gnawing at him. Around midnight, the screen lit up. His heart raced. Another message appeared. "Look under the drawer." He sat up immediately. The message made no sense. Which drawer? Then he realized his mother's drawer, the one she used to keep locked when she was alive. It had been untouched since her passing. He got out of bed quietly and walked to her room. The smell of her perfume still lingered faintly in the air. The moonlight from the window cast a soft glow on her dresser. He knelt down and slowly opened the drawer. Inside were old photos, jewelry, and folded papers. Nothing unusual. Then he remembered the message. "Look under the drawer." He tried pulling it out completely, and to his surprise, the bottom part came loose. Beneath it was a small white envelope, yellowed slightly with age. On the front, in his mother's handwriting, were 2 words, "For my son." His hands trembled as he picked it up. The envelope felt light. He opened it carefully, afraid it might tear. Inside was a single letter written in blue ink. The handwriting was neat but shaky, as if she had written it when she was already unwell. He began to read. "My dear boy, if you ever find this letter, it means I couldn't tell you everything I wanted to while I was still here. I know how hard life will feel without me, but I need you to remember that my love for you doesn't end with this world. I want you to be strong. I want you to eat well, sleep well, and follow your dreams no matter how far they take you. You are my greatest gift in this life. Don't be sad for too long. Cry if you have to, but then smile again. You were born to bring light to people around you. Promise me you'll keep doing that. With all my love, Mom. Tears rolled down his cheeks. The handwriting, the words, the way she always called him my boy. It all felt so real. It was like she had written this just for that moment. He sat there for a long time, holding the letter close to his chest. He didn't know if the message on his phone was somehow connected to this, but deep down it didn't matter anymore. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was a miracle. Either way, it led him to something precious. The next morning, his aunt found him sitting by the window holding the letter. When he showed it to her, she gasped softly. "She must have written this before the hospital," she whispered. "She wanted you to find it someday." He nodded, wiping his tears. "The message told me where it was," he said quietly. His aunt looked at him for a long time, unsure of what to say. Then she smiled sadly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe love really does find its way back," she said softly. From that day, something inside him began to change. The fear that had been haunting him started to fade. He no longer jumped at every text notification or stared at the phone waiting for another message. He felt like his mother had said everything she needed to. Still, that night, he placed the phone on the table beside her picture and whispered, "Thank you." He didn't expect any more messages. But the next morning, when he woke up, he saw one final text on the screen. It said, "I'm proud of you." He smiled, tears filling his eyes again. That was the last time her number ever sent anything. After that, the phone stayed completely silent. Weeks passed and life slowly found its rhythm again. He returned to school, spent more time with his friends, and started helping his aunt around the house. The pain was still there, but now it was softer, less heavy. One afternoon, he decided to visit the cemetery again. He took a bouquet of white flowers, his mother's favorite, and walked quietly to her grave. The air was calm and sunlight filtered through the trees. He knelt down and placed the flowers carefully. "I found your letter," he whispered. "I'm okay now." He sat there for a while, talking to her softly, telling her about school, about how his aunt was doing, about little things that had happened. It felt almost like she was listening. Before leaving, he placed his phone gently on top of the grave for a moment. "You can rest now," he said. "I'll be all right." Then he picked it up and walked home with a light heart. That night, for the first time since her passing, he slept peacefully. No dreams, no messages, just a calm silence that felt comforting. Days turned into weeks, and he kept the letter safely in a small box on his desk. Sometimes, when he missed her too much, he'd take it out and read it again. Every time, it gave him strength. He realized that the strange messages had guided him not to fear, but to closure. Whether it was a coincidence or something beyond explanation, it had helped him find peace. His aunt noticed the change in him. "You're smiling more these days," she said one morning. He nodded. "I think I finally understand," he replied. "Understand what?" she asked. "That love doesn't disappear," he said softly. "It just changes form." His aunt smiled and hugged him. "Your mother would be proud." That night, as he looked out of his window, he felt a gentle breeze brush his face. Somewhere deep inside, he felt her presence, calm, warm, and full of love. He whispered into the quiet night, "I miss you, Mom." And though no message appeared on the screen this time, he knew she had heard him. Time passed quietly after the strange messages stopped. The boy's days slowly started to feel normal again. Though life still carried the gentle ache of missing someone he loved deeply, he went back to school, helped his aunt with chores, and sometimes visited the park where his mother used to take him when he was little. The world hadn't changed, but he had. The fear that had once followed him, the uncertainty, the haunting ringtone, the unanswered questions, was gone. In its place, there was calmness. He no longer waited for a message. Instead, he found comfort in memories, in the quiet moments that reminded him of his mother's kindness. Every morning, he would stop by her photo on the table and whisper, "Good morning, Mom." It became his little habit, something that made him feel she was still part of his life. And every night before going to bed, he'd whisper, "Good night," just like he used to when she tucked him in as a child. One evening, his aunt came into his room holding a small box. "I think you should have this," she said. Inside the box were some of his mother's things, her favorite scarf, a few letters, and a silver bracelet she used to wear every day. He smiled softly as he touched each item. "It smells like her," he said quietly. His aunt nodded. "I thought maybe keeping these close would help you feel better." He thanked her and placed the box on his desk next to his mother's photo. It felt like a piece of her had come home again. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. His aunt received a call from one of his mother's old friends who lived in another city. She had found an old notebook that belonged to his mother and wanted to return it. They arranged to meet at a cafe nearby. When the boy opened the notebook later, he saw pages filled with his mother's handwriting. It wasn't just notes, it was like a diary. She had written about her dreams for him, her hopes and her fears about leaving him alone if her illness got worse. On one page she had written, "If anything happens to me, I hope he knows I'm still with him. I hope he finds a reason to smile again." He sat in silence for a long time, reading every word carefully. Each page felt like a conversation between them. It reminded him of how she used to sit by his side, telling stories or helping him with homework. Later that night, he went outside and sat on the porch, holding the notebook. The sky was clear, filled with stars. A cool breeze touched his face, and for a brief second he felt something. A warmth, almost like someone had placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. He didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the stars, whispering softly, "I miss you, Mom." A soft smile formed on his lips, not out of sadness, but peace. He realized she wasn't really gone, not completely. She lived in the way he remembered her. In her words, her laughter, and her lessons. From that night onward, he started writing his own thoughts in the notebook, on the blank pages at the end. He wrote about his school days, his dreams, and how much he missed her. He even wrote little updates as if he were sending her messages in his own way. One entry read, "Mom, I got good grades this month. You'd be proud. Aunt said I've been smiling more. I think it's because I feel you with me." As weeks turned into months, he found himself talking about his mother more freely. He shared stories about her with his friends, how she used to sing while cooking, how she laughed loudly at her own jokes, how she made ordinary days feel special. His friends listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes tearing up. But what mattered most was that he was no longer afraid of remembering her. One day, his aunt suggested something. "Maybe we could visit the grave together," she said gently. He agreed. It had been a few months since his last visit. When they reached the cemetery, the sun was just beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The boy carried fresh white lilies, his mother's favorite flowers. He knelt beside the grave, brushed away the leaves, and placed the flowers carefully. "Hey, Mom," he whispered. "I've been doing okay." His aunt stood quietly behind him, giving him space. The boy stayed there for a while, talking softly. He told her about school, about the letter, about the diary, about everything that had happened. And as he spoke, the evening wind blew gently across his face. It felt almost like an answer, not in words, but in warmth. Before leaving, he took out his phone and looked at it. The screen was cracked in one corner, the battery weak, but he hadn't replaced it. That phone, the one that once filled him with fear and confusion, now felt like a symbol of love that refused to fade. He smiled and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mom." As he and his aunt walked away, he didn't look back with sadness. He felt lighter, as if something heavy had finally lifted from his heart. In the days that followed, life began to bloom around him again. He joined his school's art club, made new friends, and started drawing, something his mother had always encouraged. One of his favorite drawings was of a mother and child looking at the stars. He titled it "Messages from the Sky." His art teacher loved it and asked if he'd like to display it in the school exhibition. When the day came, his aunt came to see it, and she smiled through her tears. "Your mom would be so proud," she whispered. The boy smiled too. "I think she already knows." Time moved forward as it always does. Seasons changed. New people came into his life, and old memories gently settled like dust. Never forgotten, just quieter. He grew older, wiser, calmer. Years later, on the anniversary of his mother's passing, he visited her grave again. The cemetery looked the same, peaceful and quiet. He carried the same white flowers. The world had changed around him, but this place still felt the same, sacred, calm, and full of memories. He sat down and began to talk softly again, just like before. "It's been a while, Mom," he said with a gentle smile. "I finished college. Got a job. Things are okay. You'd be happy to know I kept your phone. It's old now, doesn't even turn on anymore, but I couldn't throw it away. It feels like a part of you." He took out the phone and placed it gently beside the flowers. Sometimes I still look at it, he said. It reminds me of how love doesn't really end. It just changes the way it speaks.